Welcome to Liberty and Justice. I'm Matt Whitaker. I'm joined today by my friend, Gene Hamilton from the America First Legal Foundation, right? Do I get that right? Okay. I should know. I'm on the board of
That's
directors.
right.
But anyway, I'm glad you're here. When we set up this interview, I wanted to talk about this week's Supreme Court hearing in the Senate, which we'll get to. But also, I know how busy and active AFL has been in a lot of these litigation efforts around the country, and so I want to get to that as well. But let's start off. First of all, you're the executive director of America First Legal Foundation. Why don't you tell the listeners and viewers a little bit about AFL, and then we'll just jump off from there.
Well, thanks for having me on, Matt. Look, America First Legal is an organization. It's a conservative public interest litigation group. There's a number of these on the right, but we are obviously, as a conservative movement, we have been outgunned and really outfunded to a significant degree for decades in the legal space. The left has used litigation and the tools that Congress has made available to make a difference for their causes. Our side has not always been so quick on the take to make the same types of changes and to fight for things that matter. And all too often have been willing to just lay over and let the ACLU do whatever it wants on a particular issue, or let whatever administration do whatever it wants. And so we were formed to hold the administration accountable, to stop the madness from the left, from these woke mobs, and to fight for American values, America First values, conservative values, and to make a difference. And so we've been in existence for less than a year. It's hard to believe. It does. It feels just like yesterday. But we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary in a couple weeks. We've had the opportunity to work on some fantastic stuff so far, make a real meaningful difference. And that's both in the litigation space and in the oversight space. And there's a lot more to come.
So I know you, like a lot of Americans, have been watching Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee be interviewed. And I guess, what are your initial observations, and do you think she's going to ultimately have any problems being confirmed?
Well, those are great questions. Look, of course. Look, she is obviously a well-educated and trained and incompetent jurist. The problem is that unlike what the left is saying, or what some of the senators on the left are saying, or even people maybe in the middle, that they need to really understand, she is a committed leftist. She is a committed radical. And some of that has been kind of buried and pushed to the side, and some of it seems to be flaring up in the hearing so far. But what I think is important for everyone to realize is that she is not a judge who seems to be anchored by rule of law principles, and really seems to be more oriented towards outcomes in the way that she adjudicates cases. I think one of the perfect examples of this was something that we all saw and experienced in the last administration, something that Lindsey Graham highlighted today, which was a decision where she struck down the expansion of a use of authority in the immigration laws to quickly deport recently arrived illegal aliens, and struck it down. And she was overturned eventually, these things take time, by the D.C. Circuit, and they very clearly explained the errors of her ways. But I think for me, one of the ultimate arbiters of how someone is going to be as a jurist can be their application of the immigration laws, because sometimes they might seem harsh, they might seem kind of unfair. But if we are a country that is going to be governed by the rule of law, then we have to have people who are committed to applying those laws regardless of what the outcome might be. And in that case in particular, I think we saw a very bad sign of what might be to come from her as we go forward. Look,
Gene, let me interrupt, Gene. Let me interrupt
I think
because I think this is so important. You and I were at the Department of Justice at the same time, and you were actually there the entire 4 years. I was not. But what we both knew was that if we went to the District of Columbia, District Court, we draw this judge, we're more than likely to lose as an administration. This was very much a judge that was viewed as anti-Trump administration. And I think it is so important to just really emphasize what you just said there on the immigration laws. Congress passed this immigration system. And, we were enforcing it and using all the tools available to prevent illegal immigration, to make sure that people with legitimate asylum claims could make those claims and they were adjudicated in a timely manner. And all the kind of things you would expect. But when you don't follow the law as a judge, and to your point, you try to get a result, then you've completely thrown over the side of the boat the rule of law, and you're kind of in the law of judges, and that is not our constitutional system. And this is what liberals so often want, is they want these activist judges. And I think Judge Brown Jackson will be an activist judge. Now, she'll be in a minority and she'll probably won't do a ton of damage, at least in the near term. But that type of judge that is outcomes based, that is inconsistent with the rule of law, that is looking to change the law from the courts instead of passing laws through Congress that represent the people, I think that's where our whole system starts to break down. I mean, I'm certain you agree with me, but I just I really feel strongly about that.
Absolutely, you're 100% right. I mean, it is. The statute in question couldn't have been more clear. It vested the authority to expand the use of this authority in the sole and unreviewable discretion of the Secretary of Homeland Security. And so for a judge to see language that says this is as plain as you could ever get in terms of vesting authority in the executive to do something, and she was willing to go around that language and to not uphold that language and to strike something down that is just so plainly authorized by Congress, it should be a big warning sign for everybody. Just kind of like last night's, inability to answer the basic question, what is a woman? Saying you're not a biologist is no way to approach these things. And there are so many warning signs, whether it's on the sentencing issues for the child pornography, whether it's on the immigration stuff, whether it's on the inability to accept basic reality, male versus female. We are confronted with somebody who is going to pose a lot of problems for the rule of law in America. Now, look, will she get confirmed? I don't know. That's up to Joe Manchin. That's up to Senator Kelly. That's up to Senator Sinema and other people. What are they going to do? Is this the person that they stand for? I suspect that over time, people will hold those senators accountable for votes to confirm people like this to the highest court in the land. But ultimately, I think the outcome is probably fairly preordained in terms of what happens.
Yeah. Do you
Senate
think?
confirmation,
Let's take a step back. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that Judge Brown Jackson, is qualified for this role. I mean, she was a district court judge, an appellate court judge. She's, a lawyer. She's trained. She's, she obviously there are, unfortunately, she's from, sort of that vein of elite schools, and we don't really get any. While we get, I guess, diversity of sex and race, we're not getting intellectual diversity at all. We're not getting educational diversity at all. And so this diversity thing for just based on a couple factors without looking at the whole picture, I think is, uniquely a left-wing operation because I think conservatives more look to, the whole person and, their diversity of thought, their diversity of experience and those types of things. I mean, it's, I don't know. I don't think we have any state school grads on the Supreme Court. I think they're all Yale, Harvard, and Amy Coney Barrett is Notre Dame, if I remember right, which is not a state school by any measure. So,
right.
I guess I'm going to keep cheering
Right.
and pulling for someday having a state school grad on the Supreme Court to prove that those like you and I that didn't go to these fancy law schools can hold our own at that level. But nonetheless, I mean, I think let's take a step back. Do you think these confirmation hearings and the full week of pomp and circumstance is worth it, or should we just sort of take an up-down vote and call it a day? I mean, are we hoeing any new ground here, or is it all just kind of a little bit of a talisman that we all see what we want to see?
Right. Well, look, I think that these types of hearings can be very much a kabuki theater, very much just preordained, and everyone kind of knows what's going to happen, and people go through the motions. But they do provide opportunities for members, for senators who actually do want to get to the bottom of how somebody is going to approach cases, how they're going to approach the law. And so in response to Senator Blackburn, last night, when a senator can ask a very simple question, it can provide a very illuminating answer that you never would have received through the written questionnaire that she submitted or through the judicial opinions. I mean, the inability to basically say, to answer the question, what is a woman, is something that wouldn't have come out but for this hearing, and that's incredibly important, because that inability to just again accept basic reality, to think that they have to be pleasing to all people at all times, that there's some constituents out there that they're going to offend if they admit that there's a difference between a man and a woman. It is really informative, and it should be telling to senators who are still supposedly making up their mind. Now, if it's just a up and down party line vote, then that's a indication of a bigger problem that we have as a society. But if people were being objective, and if they were actually evaluating this candidate on the merits, I think that they would be right to at least ask more questions of her and to get more information of her, given what we've seen so far in this hearing, if not to just refuse to confirm her to the highest court in the land. Yeah. It's one thing to be on the Court of Appeals. It's one thing to be a district court judge. It's an entirely different thing to be the court of last review. Doesn't mean you're always right, but you're the court of last review. And so what they're going to do, what they can do from that court over time is going to have ripple effects for generations. And she's going to be there, and she's going to be writing opinions, and we'll see. I mean, we'll see how many times she uses the word woman in judicial opinions going forward. It's going to be like a drinking game at this point in time for the legal world.
Drinking games.
So,
exactly. We could talk all day about this, and for some reason, the squishy leaders in the Senate, like Mitch McConnell, don't want to actually pick this fight, and I can understand the real politic of that. And so, we're probably going to see this wave through. I would be surprised if any Republicans vote in support of this nomination, but it just depends, based on the R3 nominees. And again, you and I were there together for Kavanaugh and saw that firsthand what a nightmare that was, and obviously Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett and how they were treated. Really, I think Gorsuch was the only one that felt like kind of got a fair shake and a normal experience. The other two, I think, were really shamefully treated, especially the religious issues with Amy Coney Barrett, and then the baseless allegations of people that were just making up claims of Kavanaugh. Let's remember, he was accused, I think, by one of the mainstream, outlets of traveling up and down the coast in a pirate ship, marauding the coastline. If I remember, I mean, it was so bizarre. At some point in time, you just had to think these people aren't serious. But let's talk.
Right. Yeah, look, I mean, it's the difference couldn't be more clear, night and day in terms of the approach. Now, look, that doesn't mean that nominees don't need to answer hard questions. And I think the one thing that you see that's different from the way that this hearing is going, or these confirmation proceedings are going, is that the Republicans are very much focused on substance. They want to get to, okay, how are you going to decide a case Even Senator Cruz's questions about critical race theory and issues along those lines, it goes to how the person is actually going to decide a case. They're not going for character assassination. They're not trying to dig up old high school yearbooks, or make up all kinds of crazy things with, surprise star witnesses who come up with crazy stories. They are trying to get to the bottom of how this person is actually going to do their job. Whereas what we saw in the other side, maybe with the exception of Gorsuch, was 100% character assassination all the time. They didn't care how the person was going to decide the case. All that they cared about was making sure that person wasn't confirmed. And you couldn't have two different approaches to these hearings. And so I guess, look, we'll see what happens. But at least the minority in the Senate right now is focused on the substance, and they're not going after her.
Well, let's pivot now
vicious
to talk about the important work of AFL. And why don't you tell us kind of what's hot and heavy right now on your caseload and where you're holding this administration accountable to the rule of law?
Well, there are so many ways and so many different things that we could talk about. I mean, one thing that we just did today, and it's just the beginning of a process, is we just filed a FOIA with the department, with HHS. They formed a couple of months ago a task force on abortion, dedicated to expanding abortion, not only in the United States but around the world. But none of their work has seen the light of day. It's a little strange that this would be some focus of the federal government on ways that they can expand abortion, given everything else that's going on right now. And so, look, we'll see what happens. We will shine a light on what happens there. But that's just an example of just one-off thing that we're up to at AFL. One of the things that we have particularly enjoyed over the last few months, I think, is fighting for equal treatment for all under the law in a variety of ways. One of those ways, I think, that is we all saw in the news some of these COVID antiviral medication rationing policies were starting to pop up in different states across the country. Say, hey, the supplies are limited. And so instead of just trying to allocate the medicine based on medical need, based on individual patient circumstances, there's a number of states who just went out and said, hey, guess what? If you're non-white, you're automatically at risk. You're automatically at higher risk. Don't care anything else about your background, whatever. You automatically qualify. So in some states, there would be like a scoring system where they would automatically get a point. Others, there's different ways of doing things. Right. But that obviously violates the Constitution. It violates multiple federal laws. It's egregious. It's anti-American. We don't treat any citizen different on the basis of their skin color, period. Like your doctor should be making decisions about you as an individual patient based on your own medical history, not based on some aspersion that's cast on you as a minority or discriminating against you because you are a white person just solely based on your race, the color of your skin. So we had a number of states adopt that. We sent letters to 4 different states, New York, Minnesota, Utah, and New Mexico. 3 of those states abandoned their policies. So that's Minnesota, Utah, and New Mexico. We're in active litigation with New York, and we'll see. We're fully briefed for a PI in district court in the Northern District of New York, and we're hoping for a good result for our client there and for the class of all New Yorkers that he represents. And so that's just one example of one way where, look, we have the radical left, whether they're in this administration, whether they're in the Congress, whether they're in states, wherever, where the concept of equal rights and the concept of equality under the law is no longer enough. And instead, what matters is equity. And what matters is using the levers and the power of government to, raise one group up and hold another group down based solely on some immutable characteristic like the color of their skin. We're going to see this stuff a lot more going forward, unless we stop it in its tracks. And so that's what we're one of the many things
that you've been working on and that this administration has been fighting is Title 42. Why don't you explain what Title 42 is, what you all did in the Trump administration, and then kind of why this administration is fixated on on changing Title 42 and the powers under that.
Yeah, so decades ago, Congress passed authority that really described in detail, I think, what some might understand to be an inherent sovereign authority of any government across the world, which is special authorities that recognize the ability to prevent people or things from being brought into the country during times of pandemics. And so it was a tool that was begun to be utilized during the Trump administration. Again, this authority has been on the books for 70, 80 years. It's been used previously to exclude certain items and certain kinds of animals and other things, but no one had necessarily used it in the way that it was done for COVID-19. Because look, there was no real pandemics that people had to deal with in the same way up until now, since the authority was passed. So this authority, what it allowed the administration to do was to say, look, if we're worried about and we're concerned about the spread of COVID and its introduction to the United States and all of its variants, one of the ways that it comes into the United States is by people crossing the border unlawfully. I mean, it's basic reality. And so this authority allows the federal government to prevent the introduction of those people, to prevent their entry into the United States and their quick expulsion during times of pandemic, when American citizens are being told to mask up, to vaccinate, to do all these different things. But at the border, the policies are totally different, apparently, under this administration. So this administration went in, committed to, I think, eliminating the use of this authority. But of course, I think they also felt somewhat constrained by the comparison to what was happening domestically with COVID. And so they accepted entire categories of people, of aliens, from coverage of this regime. First, they did so without any kind of actual analysis, any explanation. Then they sprung another explanation along the way. Finally, a district court judge a few weeks ago enjoined their use of this, their failure to use this authority, failure to follow the law that they have, an order that they have on the books, as being arbitrary and capricious under the APA. And so, again, this is an authority that is to be used in times like these. The administration has issued orders to use this authority. They're using it for some single adults. They're not using it for a lot of the family units. They're not using it for the unaccompanied minors. And they're doing this. They've been doing this for a year now, decreasing their use of this authority. And so refusing to expel people under this authority and instead mass catching and releasing them into the interior of the United States. And again, they've been doing this the entire time that they have had federal mask mandates on transportation facilities and on airplanes. At the same time, they're trying to force a vaccine mandate through OSHA on private employers, on federal employees and contractors. You name it, there's no limit to what they wanted to do domestically in the United States. But my gosh, if you're an illegal alien coming across the border unlawfully, whoa, it's totally different. And so we've been fighting. We've been proud to partner with a number of states to work on things in the immigration arena. And this is one of them with the state of Texas, where we have had success so far. We'll see what's to come. It's obviously it's a matter of ongoing litigation, so there's only so much I can say about the actual case itself. But it's just illustrative of a broader kind of lack, I think, of respect for the rule of law that we see in this administration, and the failure to secure our borders, and instead, the mass catch and release of illegal aliens into the interior of the United States, into communities all across the United States, since January 20th.
Well, you're very knowledgeable in this area, as one would expect based on your background and experience. But I can't help but notice the well-placed Georgia medallion behind your head today. And you're the second Georgia Bulldog I've had on the show in 7 episodes. Doug Collins was the first, and he's a proud Georgian as well. And you guys all hang together with your Bulldogs. It's nobody cheers for anybody in Georgia except the Bulldogs, from what I can tell. Yes.
The red and black runs strong.
Speaking of one of your Bulldog fans, what's any insight into the current Senate race between Herschel Walker and I guess Warnock, right? Is that the senator that he's taking on?
Indeed. So look,
Yeah,
just as a
private
passive
citizen
observer,
that lives in the state of Georgia sometimes.
Herschel Walker is a great man. He's a great Georgian. He's admitted to anything that people have brought up in the past. Everyone has a past. Everyone has experiences. But Herschel Walker is the kind of guy, again, that I think that a lot of Georgia fans, watched grow up. They watched him play. They watched the way that he brought this mentality to the game of football that I think that they hope that he will bring to engaging in governing in the United States Senate. So I think things look good for him if he takes the same approach to the football, if he takes the same approach to his training and physical conditioning regimen as he did in that area and applies it to the Senate. He'll be an unstoppable force. And so I'm excited. I'm excited to see what happens here. It'll be a good race. I think Herschel's going to prevail. Obviously, it's March of 2022. The election's in November, so a lot of things change. But Herschel is if you look up a Georgia Bulldog in the encyclopedia, his picture is right there.
Those of us that grew up in the '80s remember the iconic runs and all he did in that time period. He was just an absolute load as a running back. Well, as we're concluding here, how can people learn more about America First Legal Foundation, and how can they get involved?
That's a great question again. You're just full of them today. Absolutely. So our website's the best place to go, www.aflegal.org. You can sign up for our email list there on the website. We're on all the social media networks, Twitter, Getter, Parler, Facebook, you name it. We'll be on.
Okay. Because I'm on Truth.
Our application is pending.
Early adopters on Truth. So.
Are you?
Beta tester.
That's great. Yeah, look, we try to put as much out there as we can, but we do need people to follow us and to stay engaged because we're on top of so many of these issues that we're talking about, even today, where we're doing good work. It's a good place to stay updated. So sign up for our email updates. We'll keep you posted on our cases, on our oversight work, on all the goings on that are really, some of the most critical issues that are confronting our country right now, whether that's immigration, whether it's critical race theory, whether it's transgender ideology, whether it's abortion, whether it's just rule of law and oversight principles. We're working on them, and we want to share our work. So I hope folks go there and check it out.
Gene Hamilton, thank you. I appreciate the time today. Look forward to seeing you in person someday soon. We haven't been able to spend any time together in quite some time, which is disappointing for both of us. But we keep missing each other. You're walking in the door, I'm walking out. But we'll figure out a way that we can intersect. So, thanks for joining us today. This has been an interview with Gene Hamilton, the executive director of the America First Legal Foundation. You're watching Liberty and Justice. I'm Matt Whitaker. You can catch us really anytime. We debut Fridays, 7 p.m. on CPAC Now, but we're out there on all the podcast networks and on all the social media. So just look us up. And if you want to go to one-stop shop, go to whitaker.tv. Gene, thanks again, and we will be in contact soon.